Hello again and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I'm Dave, and in this video I want to talk a little bit about how we use scales as part of our practice routine. Kind of came from a conversation I was having with somebody the other day about, he was asking about the speed you should be aiming to play scales at, you know, in building your proficiency up with scales as part of your practice routine. And that kind of conversation went into, well, how we actually use scales and what's the value in learning a scale anyway. Scales are basically the fundamental building block of music. If you're playing music in, you know, a piece of music that's written in the key of C major, then you're using notes that come from the C major scale. If you're playing music in the key of, you know, B minor, you're using notes that come from the B natural minor scale. So it kind of makes sense that if you want to be able to be proficient with playing music, you need to be proficient with playing those scales. And that's true, but I think that you get to a point where it's like diminishing returns from just trying to get more and more and more proficient with playing a scale through. Now this is where a tool like PhatPhish can help you. This isn't a blatant sales pitch for your PhatPhish, but it is really useful. And I say sales, to be honest, PhatPhish is free to download, it's free to use. All I ask is you register it and let me know that you're using it. If you do like it and you want to give me a donation to say thank you, that would be gratefully received, but you're under no obligation. So let's say you're wanting to learn a new scale. Say you're fairly new to the guitar and getting into scales, and you want to learn a scale like the natural minor scale. Well, fire up PhatPhish, let's pick a root note. Let's say we'll go for A, and we can dial in the notes of an A natural minor scale, and this shows you where all the notes are from A natural minor across a guitar in just regular tuning. If you want to use different tuning, then there's options in PhatPhish as well, but we'll not go into that now. This is standard guitar. This is where the notes of the A natural minor scale are. So as you can see, because of the way the guitar's tuned, the same note repeats itself across the neck in different places and different octaves and whatnot. And what we can do is we can start to look for like scale boxes. So we've got a box like this. This is probably the most typical natural minor scale box that you'll come across. And I would suggest, as part of your practice routine, as you're wanting to get familiar with the scale, then you just play that through. You know, so get familiar with the way that the scale sounds. You know, each scale has its own particular sound. A major scale sounds different to a natural minor scale, which sounds different to a harmonic minor, which sounds different to a melodic minor, and so on. So get your ear tuned into the way that the scale sounds, but get your muscle memory kind of starts to commit the shape of the scale, so you can just play it more naturally by, like I say, by muscle memory. And then you can start to look for variations. So you don't want to just get locked into only playing from that one scale box. So you could look at variations. For example, there's this sort of shape, which is using some slightly different towards the top, but the thing about this is it's strictly 3 notes per string. Or there's other variations like this one where you're using the same fingering pattern across all 6 strings, but you're actually sliding up by a couple of semitones on alternate strings. And you can play the same sort of idea going down, but it's a slightly different fingering pattern. So there's a few ideas, and there are plenty of the scale boxes. You know, you can move everything up the neck, sort of invert the scale and play something like this. So loads of different options, but the 2 things you need to be thinking about are you playing the right notes? You know, you need to be playing the scale notes, obviously, but also the speed at which you're playing them needs to be a speed at which you can play the notes accurately and evenly. So if you think about playing against a metronome, if you're playing, so like in time or on time, every note of the scale is being played on a beat of the metronome. So as the metronome's ticking, you're playing notes. yeah, and so on. Because the trap people often fall into is they try to play as fast as they possibly can, but then they lose the accuracy of the timing, particularly on things like transitioning between strings. So you end up with a very uneven way they play in the scale. Now that's just not what you want. You want to be playing at a speed where your timing is accurate and every note of the scale lasts as long as every other note of the scale. And the key to doing that is to start slow and build the speed up. So I mentioned metronome. If you've got a metronome, that's great. It's a really useful tool. But what you can also do is just put you can put PhatPhish into a mode where it'll play the scale for you and show you where the notes are, so you've got something to play along to. But you can set the speed as well, so you can start at something slow, play along with PhatPhish at a slower speed, and once you're comfortable that you're hitting the notes on time and playing it accurately, then you can build the speed up and play faster and play faster. But there is an upper limit, I think, as to how fast you want to be playing scales, because like I say, it becomes a bit of a diminishing return. Just being able to play a scale through blisteringly fast, it's sort of impressive as a party trick, but in terms of how you then take that and use it in your everyday guitar playing and your music making, maybe not so much. What I think is much more useful, and where it's better to invest time in being able to play efficiently and accurately and fast, is looking at patterns that you can derive from the scale. So a good place to start is, say, taking alternate notes from the scale. So playing like 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5 sort of patterns, so this sort of thing. You know, all the way up through the scale and all the way down. That sort of thing. And again, this is something that PhatPhish can help you with. I'm not going to go into loads of detail now. There's a whole bunch of PhatPhish tutorials in a playlist on the PhatPhish channel on YouTube. But you should be able to find your way around it. It's a reasonably intuitive interface. Most people find their way around it without any problems. But you can get PhatPhish, as well as just playing the scale, to play through patterns. And you can then, if you want to create your own patterns, you can do. So I use the example there of like alternate notes, but you could use the pattern builder to build things like maybe like an arpeggio type pattern, 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6 type of thing, using 3 alternate notes at a time, or something like 3 sequential notes, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4 sort of thing, up and down scale, 4 notes at a time, or any sort of pattern that you want. But this is much more useful, I think, in terms of how you build it into your practice routine, because this is more like what you're going to be doing when you're playing solos or you're playing melody lines based on the scale. This is more like, if you think about when you were learning to read, or if you've got kids and you're teaching them to read, you sort of initially start off and you kind of read every word sort of quite slowly. Then when you get to the end of the line, there's like a pause, and go back and you read every word of the line. And there's a pause, and then as you get more proficient with reading, you learn to just kind of go from the end of one line to the start of the other, and you use the punctuation in the sentences to control the timing. But you practice reading by practicing reading words and sentences. You don't just sit and recite the alphabet as fast as you possibly can. And that's a bit like playing scales. It's the fundamental building blocks, but aside from kind of having an understanding of what you're working with, the value in terms of use is diminished compared to playing against, playing patterns of sort of shapes that you're more likely to be using when you're playing lead lines and melodies and whatnot, if you see what I mean. Okay, I hope you found that useful. If you did, please click like down there. If you really enjoyed it and you want to see other videos that I post onto the channel, then please click subscribe. You're welcome to leave a comment. I don't always see comments left on YouTube videos, though, so if you've got a specific question that you want to ask me, whether it's about guitar playing, music theory, guitar equipment, anything at all, you're better off going here, filling that form in and sending your question in that way. Guaranteed to see it, and I can get around to answering your question in a future video. I've mentioned PhatPhish quite a few times here. You can download that from the PhatPhish website at phatphish.co.uk. Like I say, it's free to download and free to use, runs on any Windows machine. If you're using non-Windows or you're out and about and you just want to access it from a browser, there's also a browser-based application as well. Not as much functionality in that, but it's useful for reference for finding the notes of scales. Like I said, it's free to use, free to download. All I'll ask is that you register it, so I know that you are using it, so I know like what its reach is out there in the world. But if you do like it and you want to kind of give me a donation, then there's a link on the PhatPhish website where you can go to my PayPal and send a donation, which would be very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye for now.